Hello and welcome to What's Up with Startups, episode 9. And this episode is first in the second season of our podcast. And this time I have guests. I have Maxine Cronier with me from SmartHelio. Maxine, hello.
Hi, Emin. Nice to be here.
Thank you for taking time. So SmartHelio is a predictive software for photovoltaic stations, and you're based in Switzerland, and you help solar station owners to avoid excessive maintenance and reduce downtime. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. So basically, we have developed this software that allows to predict failures in solar plants. So our aim is we like to maximize the performance of the solar plants by preventing downtime, but also minimizing costs because, of course, it's always more cheaper to avoid something to get broken before fixing it. So that's the spirit.
Okay, great. I was always personally a bit skeptical of the predictive maintenance services when I was working, say, at wind power plants. A little bit I was involved with solar or with batteries. So I was okay. The idea looks nice, but is it worth it? So I know you are not. This is not your first year as a startup. So tell us when you decided to start this business. What was the idea that how you could move this forward, how you could overcome this skepsis of the owners of the power plants?
Yes. So indeed now we're entering our 5th year of operation. But clearly, like the skepticism that you are mentioning, like this is quite common, especially like at the beginning. And I'm gonna be very transparent with you. Like I think the first year that we operated, we were like in a client meeting and well, just presenting what we're doing. And then we've been told this is the most stupid idea that I have ever heard. So at that point, it hurts. But I think this is also like a pretty common objection to hear as a startup or as any like innovative company who wants to disrupt the status quo. At that time, it was very common to just wait till something gets down to fix it, because at that time the solar plants were still very recent. So of course they were well performing. So, and also we did not have the same volume 5 years back that right now. Now it's just crazy, like the exponential growth. So that's why like we are also good in the timing, I would say. But yeah, now so that's why like parts of our work, especially like on the initial years, it was mostly like on the education, on explaining, okay, like there's a problem and this is the solution, or a solution at least. So, but yeah, we get that, at least like we used to, and right now it's getting much better.
You told me that when we were preparing for this episode, that your first product offer involved hardware. So you actually started off as a hardware business. Can you tell a bit more about that?
Yes. So basically, let me give you like some history here. So before we founded this company, SmartHelio, in 2019, we used to have like a first startup, also in solar, but much more in the education. So we had like this startup, which is called LED Safari, which was focusing on raising awareness on clean energy and how it works, but most like in developing countries. So for the children, we had this solar DIY lamp. So really nice. And as part of this startup, we had to travel in Africa, India, Latin America. And then there we realized that there were actually lots of solar plants, mostly like off-grid, but they were existing. So then we still could not understand why there's still some energy poverty. And what we realized is that there were solar plants, but no one knew how to take care of them. And the most surprising thing is that this problem was actually not only happening like in developing countries, in remote areas, but it was also happening here in Europe or in other, like, let's say, like more developed countries. So at that point of time, we saw, okay, maybe what we can do is develop a solution that actually help to identify what are the reasons of underperformance and what needs to be done. So this is where we started. And that's how we started to develop this IoT sensor. Because initially, like the thought was, okay, we need to analyze the plants which are in remote areas and thus that are off grid and that might not have like any access to internet or to at least like to the cloud to share the data. So that's how we started with this IoT sensor hardware. Yeah.
Okay. And why did you pivot? Why did you decide it? Okay, now we go into a full software as a service model.
Yes, so you might have heard of like a small event which happened like early 2020, which is known as the COVID. So this for sure disturbed all our operations because we got incorporated late 2019, so in November. So finally, we were starting like some operations, doing some pilots early 2020. And when we finally got some companies who were interested in trying out our hardware, there was a lockdown. So no one could go out anymore to install the sensors. And we're like, okay, how can we collect the data that we need in order to analyze the plant's performance? So then we actually had like quite an idea. Like actually, all the data that we're collecting is simply like voltage and current. Maybe it's the same data, we could find it from the cloud. It's already out there. Okay, maybe not at the panel level, but do we really need at the panel level to still do something? Like we really wanted to contribute to the energy transition and to make sure that even if we're all stuck at home, that the energy transition should not stop at the same time. So we thought a lot about it and we understood that we could actually access to the existing data in the cloud simply via API. So that was like a very important moment in our journey actually, because we had like a drastic pivot, like we completely stopped the hardware. Well, for this reason. And the second reason was also as part again of the COVID. We all faced lots of supply chain issues, which are still happening now. And that also led to like very significant increase of the price, or at least of the costs of the materials of the hardware. So this was really like this two reasons why we decided that actually we can still provide our solution without hardware. And well, now we decided to go like 100% software mode.
Okay. Yeah, I think all of the founders can tell stories about the COVID. Me too. I mean, I also had this. I was in battery business then, and they had to deal with the chips shortage. But for sure, not many of them can tell how that positively impacted their business model. So you've been growing for the last couple of years since COVID, and would you think that actually switching to SaaS was to the benefit of the company, so actually enable you to grow even faster than if you would just continue to stick with if you would come back to doing the IoT sensor?
Yeah, definitely, because as part of the pivot, not only our solution has changed, but also like the whole way of us looking at the problem statement and at who could benefit from such solution. Because again, initially we had developed such solution for really like small installations which were off grid. But then we realized that actually like such solution could also benefit to bigger solar plants, to bigger owners as well. So that's why like when the pivot happened, we actually like extended our services to like, yeah, all different kind of people, all different kind of solar owners, whether it's utility scale, whether it's CNI, like commercial and industrial. So this definitely helped, at least encouraged us to look at the situation like from a fresh angle, from a very fresh perspective. And I feel that this actually helped us to, yeah, get much more opportunities that we would not have even looked at if we had stuck to the hardware business.
Going from the looking at this from an investor point of view, I would think that such a decision, when you come to investors during COVID time, say, by the way, we think that we can adapt and grow even faster, would be an easy case to sell to investors and actually make them believe in your model even more. Was that the case?
So to be honest, at that point of time, we did not have raised any money. Like everything was really like pure on revenue and
so you were bootstrapped.
Yes, exactly. We're already on, like, we're still on bootstrap at that time. Also, like, since we are based in Switzerland, to be honest, like, there's like a very strong support and ecosystem here for the startups. So we also had like reserved some grants. We had won lots of prizes like Best Startup of the Year and stuff like that. That really helped us to experiment like this new business model without having like too many risks. And yeah, like really like building like a very strong foundation to then raise money like in 2022.
Can you, this is interesting. Can you tell a little bit more about the kind of support you reached out to when you were growing? I mean, a little bit more about this ecosystem of support in Switzerland, or maybe you use, I don't know, some mentors or consultants, or I don't know, accelerators, something that was instrumental to actually letting you go on despite the COVID, despite that you just started, and survive until the good times.
Yeah, for sure. So basically they were mostly specific to Switzerland, but there were also like other support mechanisms which were more global. So most of them were really like incubators, boot camps, accelerators, like, and the good thing from COVID is that everything was online suddenly. So we no longer had to go to Canada, for example, like we were part of a incubator there, or even like Y Combinator in the US. Since it was actually during the COVID, everything was online. And it just really helped us to still benefit from the experts, whether like they were VC experts or really like from the industry experts, who really helped us to find the right business model, at least like to find some business models to experiment, but which had already like some potential to also like clearly define our market positioning and all, and everything still from Switzerland. So it means that in parallel, we could still actually like run our operations, still talk to more customers and all. So yeah, this was really like helping us to find the right market positioning and to avoid common mistakes that startups can face when they are alone in their journey. Like for example, forgetting to talk to customers and only focusing on the solution development. Yeah.
Which of those advice, or which of this advice or help was, to your opinion, most crucial or most important to your survival at that time? Which would you single out?
I think that would be to never forget who you are trying to help. And this was actually like very good advice that we always kept in mind, whether it was like for the sales team, for the product team, whoever in the company, like we never forget like who we were trying to help. So like that, it really helped us to keep like a very customer-centric approach and to not lose sight. Because then it's so easy to get lost into like some very detailed software development, but if at the end you might build like a amazing software, but if no one uses it, it just goes to waste, all your efforts. So this was like very, very important advice that, to be honest, even today, like 5 years after our incorporation, we still always keep in mind, like build something that people want.
This is a good point to circle back to my first question. you said people were skeptical in the beginning. What changed after a couple of years, after COVID, after you getting all that help and support and adjusting your business model? What changed that enabled you to start growing? How you actually start, okay, now we found a way to convince these guys that they actually need this, that it's actually useful for them. And what did you change?
So I would say two things happening in parallel. The first one is really like education again. So keep talking to people, keep understanding from our side like their problem, how much it is painful to them, although they sometimes don't realize that they even have this problem. So, and then really like helping them to see, okay, this is a problem. So we like this is in the education bucket, I would say. And the second one is well, timing, because now we are seeing how fast the renewable capacity is just like increasing year after year. Like now it's just like exponential growth. And I think that maybe like 5 or 10 years back, we did not realize how fast, or we did not expect the renewable to grow that fast. Like, and that so many new players also coming to picture. So I think this is also what led the shift, you know, like from, okay, we used to do like the monitoring, let's say, or like the asset management in a certain way, like very traditionally, very manual, because this is how we're doing like in other industry, maybe. But since now we're seeing like such a rapid growth thanks to like the exponential rise of technology that of course brings all the costs down, then we know that, okay, now actually like we cannot use the same methods anymore, and we need like some digitalizations and all. And again, like this, now we are also living in an era of ChatGPT, and this is also something that helps people to see things differently and to accept that, okay, like things cannot be done the same way as we did before, because now we also have like new tools that we should use. So this really helped also like to, yeah, for the our solution acceptance.
Okay, but the second factor is more like, okay, timing is timing, but it's like an external one, the one you couldn't really control. But
Yeah.
the first one, when you're educating your customers, in one you can control. Can you give an example, like what is like educating customer? You have like a YouTube videos, or you have like a book or a booklet you give to them, or you just push them into meetings, you know, catch them at the expos, and then elevator pitch them about your proposal. How do you do that? How you educate them?
So
How the education process looks like?
yeah, no, that's a very good question. To be honest, I think that would depend on which industry, which market you're operating in. In our case, this is the third option which happens, because at the end, we're still operating in a very niche market. Like it's such a small market. Like we're targeting like not only the solar industry, but like really like the solar operators in this industry, and there are not so many, to be honest. So what worked for us was really like to build strong relationship with each of them. So although initially they were not like the buyer of our solution, still it was good for us to keep talking with them, so like that we could learn from them and keep building our solution accordingly. And even for them to see, okay, like this is the growth, this is what they're doing, you know. And then we make sure, and we keep making sure that we still have like a very strong link with them, that they understand really what we do, and this is how we're educating. But at the end, it's not like a teacher-student relationship, because this doesn't work. I think no one wants to go back to school here. But then it was really like learning from each other at the end. And I think this is really something that worked, because now we have like a very strong network, you know, like people who are literally advocating for our solution, who are saying, yeah, like this is something that has been done, or this is what needs to be done. Like, and it's kind of like SmartHelio's spy, you know, in the sense that they're themselves really like spreading the word and saying, okay, like they're themselves educating, and then it just has like a exponential effect, you know, because it's true that we could have done like some YouTube channels and all, but we don't think that this is where our target audience is. We just thought that for us, this was working best, really like the relationship and making sure that we're very close and that we are really gaining, each party is gaining something from this relationship.
Excuse me for picking this even more, because it's so fascinating, because I met founders and I was myself in the position when you try to push through that. I mean, you want to learn, yes, and you try to push, but the client, he's just blanking, especially if it's a company, if it's a big company, and say, guys, I just don't have time for you. I mean, so you have to kind of give him something for him to be interested in spending that time talking to you. So they have to be interested too. So how I would imagine that you would come and sit them and say, look, can we, like, for example, can you allow us to get this data from you? And then we can show. Or maybe you said, okay, look, this is what we've done on the other power plant, and this is what happened. And then, can you study this? Can you tell us? Maybe we can do the same at your site. So how did you manage to break that first ice that they have, to actually get them talking and get them starting to exchange your information with you?
So definitely this is not like the easiest part, and obviously it won't work with everyone, at least not on an initial stage. It will only work with what we call, like early adopters. So those are really like the people who are very visionary and they see the potential of what you're trying to do, because they feel it in their guts, and to identify who are those people, the only way is just to talk. And then you see who is receptive or not. So definitely, like, everyone is not going to give you like hours of their time, because it's true that everyone is busy, especially in this industry. Everyone is super busy, and this is why we're also like, well, we're doing what we do because we know they're busy, so we cannot also blame them or why you are not giving us enough time. The only people who would be willing to give you time is the one who, like, what those guys are doing, it makes sense. And I know this is how the industry would look like in 5-10 years. I know, I can feel they're going to disrupt things. And so those are really like the visionary, they're going to be the one pushing. And for us initially, it was only like maybe like 10 people, like just one person in each company, and it's not so many. But they were actually like instrumental for us to really make sure that we're building something that really makes sense, who were always willing to give us feedback. And yeah, and at the end, like, they are also the ones who pushed then our solution to their company, not on the initial stage again, but only when they saw, okay, like, finally, you guys, you are here. So now it's good time. So they did not open the doors from like the first date, let's say, but they really like accompanied us in our journey until the moment that we're finally ready for the doors to be opened for us. And once this was done, then it was easier to talk to even more people, because, well, then it was like the usual drill, like, okay, like, we had some use cases, it was like some social proof, and it was much easier to talk with more people. But yeah, initially it's really like these early adopters, which were important to identify.
Well, thank you very much, Maxine. This is actually, I believe this is really important for lots of green tech, clean tech startups, because we most of the time have to sell business to business. And selling business to business is a little bit different than selling to just, business to customer. And breaking it into that customer, I mean, we had I had Polina Wislenko on my podcast, and she's making floating solar, and her clients are municipalities, port authorities, which are also hard clients, to sell to. And your clients are also hard clients, so because they are solar power operators and they're growing, they're having the best time of their lives. And here you come and say, okay, guys, but you have problems. Well, we don't have problems. We're doing great. But no, actually, you do. And yeah, I would imagine how hard that is. And I think it's important lessons for all of the green tech startups who sell this technologically complicated stuff. we beat software or hardware. And I think you're right that I had to talk with one accelerator who was helping startups to get into the corporation, and I was what's the silver bullet? So, well, you have to find that person inside there in the corporation that is crazy enough to think it's good and try, and then be your advocate, and then he can lead you. If you manage to convince him, which will usually is not that difficult because he already wants to be convinced. Yeah, but finding that person, that's the hard part.
Yeah. And you know,
okay.
What is interesting
Thanks for giving the proof for that. Yeah,
of course. And what is interesting here is that, and this also makes it more complicated to find, is that there is no like a typical profile, you know, for such early adopters. Like we have seen that an early adopter can either be like CXO, like a CTO, CEO from like a very large corporate, and even like an engineer in another corporate. Like the level, the responsibilities are drastically different, you know. And yeah, like I think what worked for us is just like talk as much as you can, as early as you can, and yeah, this is how you would get your early adopters.
okay, thanks. Let me pivot a little bit to one topic that fascinates me most, but I just wanted to see how that affected you. So you started growing. So you first thought you would be hardware company, then you switched to software company, and then this market exploded in a good way. And so you had to start growing immediately. I mean, as a software company, your main resource is people. So what kind of people are you hiring? Who are you looking for, and how you get them? Where do you get them? How you make sure that they actually right fit for your business?
You know, this is tough to be honest. Because right now we are like
maybe we can
Mhm.
maybe we can narrow it down because you are the head of a global partnership and sales.
Yeah.
So probably if we can narrow it down to your area, because this is the part I would imagine that grows the fastest.
Yes and no, to be honest. Because when you're a software company, your company should grow along your software, not necessarily with people. Because also like, of course, like when you are bringing like more people, it also brings more complexity, you know, to within the organization. So we're always trying to push the capabilities of the software and of also the more tools to really like keep growing. And only when this is the last means, then we bring people. But we have tried also like increasing the team because, you know, like especially like as a startup, we always believe that the number of people in our team is actually like an indicator to the success, which is not true, or at least like not from our experience. And we have also seen that if you are only focusing on this KPI to assess your success, this might be misleading at the end. So that's why, like, for us, of course, we have, so right now, like, we're a team of 30 people. And we're a bit spread over the world. So we are in Switzerland. So we have one office in Switzerland, one in the US, and one in India. But also, like, the way that the company is organized, it's also based on like the different departments. So for example, like in Switzerland, it's mostly like on R&D, sales and strategy. And in India, it's mostly going to be really like the technology development. And in the US, then it's sales for this market. And now when it's about hiring people, then we just focus on that. Like also, we know that there's also like some cultural aspect that needs to be taken into account. And this is tough, you know, like when you are working with like people from like different cultures, different countries, this also brings complexity. This is also like very rich, of course, but then sometimes, yeah, you have to find like the right balance. You also have to find the right people So of course, like culture is one aspect, but then there's also like what is the essence, you know? And yeah, like you just have to make sure that the people that you are hiring, are they like motivated like you are? Like at least do they have the same motivation? Are they also driven? And what are their reasons to come here? Is it just that they're looking for a job? Then maybe like we're not the right place. Or are they looking really to have some impact, you know, on this specific industry? So this is always like a challenge. And I think that's yeah, regardless the size of the company, regardless like at which stage you are in your growth, I think that this is always a challenge. And yeah, so we're also like navigating through that. I think that we're doing well since we've understood that, okay, like if this takes time, that's okay, because we're not only relying on people to grow, you know.
Okay, great. But this is an important point you're making here. That you don't really, as a software company, you grow your software and you try not to rely on people, which is important, I think. And you mentioned that you incorporate various tools to avoid expanding, growing your team as much as possible. And that's actually, I can understand that from the cost perspective as well, because I mean, you add another person on board, that's cost, that's wages, that's social security, taxes, annual leave, whatever. So you immediately incur costs. Now, can you give an example of tools which you employ to, which you started using to actually keep the headcount down? One or two.
I think that would be mostly like to like ChatGPT, for example. ChatGPT is something that would be using really like for both sales, marketing, but actually like even in the product development at some point to have like some new corner cases, stuff like that. So yeah, like we can use ChatGPT like for example for content generation and all. That is pretty helpful for us.
Yeah, that's an impressive instrument, I would say. Maybe you use some kind of automation tools that not, you know, ChatGPT is good at giving you some solutions, but if you say you want to automate some process, I don't know, some I cannot give an example now, but maybe you also use some other tools apart from which are not like AI based, for example, but maybe it is AI based, but it's so okay, we put this in and it's like good. For example, you because you are spread over a couple of time zones. I don't know, you have some log with everybody can see what's happened and, you know, be on board. Or I don't know, you say, okay, we only schedule meetings, say, on Thursday, specific time slots, but all the people can get on board, or something else.
For the time slots, well, up to now, we did not have so many issues, but I'm saying up to now because now we are also expanding in Australia and it's a new game.
Oh.
But in terms of automation, this is actually like something I would say to be a bit careful with, because I think this is always like a very obvious solution that, oh, okay, actually I need to, for example, talk to as many people as possible. I need to send as many messages as possible so like that I can have some meetings. So let me automate everything. This is actually like a mistake that we did initially, because I think that automation is very good, but only like at a later stage. Like when you know, for example, like if you use automation to reach out to people, you should only use automation after you have done the same thing manually, like at least like 10, 20 times, and you know it works. Only then you can automate it. If you start already like by automating and then you see the results, not only you're going to have like very bad stats, like, okay, maybe like you only have like very low acceptance rate or reply rate and all, but also it's actually going to be very counterintuitive because, for example, you can get your email domain spammed, you can also get like all your potential opportunities that would have turned into opportunities if you had reached out manually, if you had done some personalization. Since you reached out to them with the automatic way, and to be honest, we see it when it's automated, then you just kill them already, even before they exist. So I would say that, yeah, to be a bit careful with the automation, at least on the initial stage, as long as you are not sure that, okay, like this template has worked already, and I need to use this template with that specific profile of person because I've had already enough results to know that this is working, and then only I can automate it. So yeah. I just wanted to give some heads up here because
wow,
this is really
interesting. Yeah.
So.
Thank you very much, Maxine, for this heads up, because this is one of the advice I hear that, okay, like automate everything, fine, but your experience shows that go slowly, do it by hand, try a couple of things, see what works, and then if you're really, really sure, then automate. This is an important point. This is a good takeaway for me, for sure, from our conversation. I mean, thank you very much for that. So as we coming to a little bit of close of our very interesting conversation, I have this like couple of questions I always ask. First is, okay, you're growing. What are your plans? What is your next step? What is your next big thing you plan to do in future?
Yeah. So till now we're only focused on solar because, well, this is our DNA. This is where also like the CEO and CEO's backgrounds are. So that's why it was logical for us to start with solar. But at the end of the day, we will become the brain of clean energy. Because like currently, like renewables would have like two main problems. The first one is the lack of predictability, because yeah, like the weather is unpredictable, or sometimes it's hard to predict, and also there's lots of distributed systems. So sometimes it's also a bit hard to know, okay, like how much exactly I'm going to produce. The second problem is the lack of reliability, and this is also because yeah, it's still very challenging to plan demand ahead. Of course, now there's more and more like forecasting tool, like even short term, but it's still very complicated to know exactly, okay, like how much demand we would get in 1 hour, for example, or tomorrow. So that's why like now renewables are still not very stable, but we do need stability, like to keep growing as a society and to make sure that, okay, like renewables can actually be, we can rely on renewables, and that would actually help to accelerate energy transition. So given these two issues, we understood that we really need to forecast energy, but we also need to make sure that all the systems which are existing, that they are working very well, that we can rely on them. And that's where actually like we are coming, like we really wanted to start with, okay, if we have to make sure that any system works, you have to predict, for example, failures. So like that, we know that whatever happens, this system will always produce X as promised. And we will make sure that if an inverter fails, we actually act before it does. So like that it does not impact the energy generation. So this is where we came from. Now we're actually going into the batteries, because this is like the next logical step, would say. Like, okay, like once you know, okay, like how much energy is going to be produced, whatever happens, you need to know, okay, that this energy can actually be stored somewhere, so like that it can meet the demand, whichever it is. So that would actually help, ensure like better reliability, but also provide better like economical strategy for dispatching the energy. Now, whether this is like for energy trading or for grid stability, batteries would be like way forward, and that would actually help to really like accelerate energy transition. So this is like the next step that we have already started to take. So it's like super exciting phase now. And yeah, like now we feel that we are really like at the forefront, the technology, like using AI, big data, etc. And that our mission here is really like to provide the right information to the people who are leading this energy transition, basically.
Well, that's ambitious. What would be then? What would do you see as the main hurdle, the main challenge to get to that status of the brain of the clean energy? What's the hardest part? It's going to be that you are planning to attack.
In one word, data. Data is still like a very big challenge.
Data.
Yeah, data in the industry, like it's because there is like a clear lack of standardization, and then it's very challenging to develop solution that would be like one solution, but using like so many different formats of data, so much like bad quality data as well. So definitely like data is like a big challenge to really like drive this energy transition, to make sure that we have the right information at the right time. But then I know that there are lots of initiatives, like of course, like internally, we're also doing lots of work on the data. Like, to be honest, I think 80% of our work is actually on data, and the rest is like the cherry on the cake. But I know also that there are so many like great companies who are working a lot on really like making the data standards. That way it would really unlock like a full potential from the industry, from all the new technologies that are already out there, but that needs to have like some standardization in the data, so like that we are all looking at the same thing. And it would really help also like it would also facilitate the exchange of data, of information, of getting even more cases to further develop the technology and all. So I know we would be there. I'm pretty optimistic on that. But yeah, now the question is, how long will it take to get to this point, to like the industry needs to agree on, okay, like the data, and it's not only like the technology provider, but it's actually also like the people who are creating the data, let's say, like we like the energy systems owners. We all have to at some point sit at the table and agree that, okay, now this would be the data standard that we would follow. And this is challenging.
Maybe, but I have an amateur question here. But couldn't you use AI to overcome that problem? Because I think that's what AI is supposed to. It's supposed to recognize the pattern despite the data. So when you feed the ChatGPT, or you can write like in the Cockney slang, and it will still understand that it's English, but a different one, and still be able to understand you because it recognizes the pattern. So here, would that be a solution? Maybe there's one way to get everybody to agree on a standard, which have been done before, but maybe there is a shortcut.
So that could be a way, like in the ideal world, in a world where we already have the data in good quality, and that the only ways, like the only thing to be done is just like formatting it, like agreeing like on one format or standardizing, whatever. The problem is that now the data quality is still very bad. And the way that AI works basically requires lots of data among like a very long period of time, and good quality data as well. So like that you can train it on something which is healthy. But now the problem is that now finally like companies like solar developers and all, they put lots of attention on the data, but it started literally now. Before that, it was not at all a concern, because we did not understand the power that was yet to be unlocked from data. So it means that the data that is there, like that has been there for 10 years, even more, it's very bad quality data. And thus this is not enough, like to train AI, or it will still take time. And looking at like now we're going to go into like more the climate topics, because at the end, this is why we're all here, looking at the climate urgency. I don't think that we have, like, whatever we postpone, like, oh, let's wait till we have enough data to train the AI. Let's wait that we are all sitting in the same table to standardize the data, and then we'll see. We know that whatever efforts we're postponing, its impact would also be postponed. And I don't think this is like a luxury that you can afford now.
I see. Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you very much, Maxine, for this. And just one final question. What would you recommend from the height of your experience to the startups in clean tech that are just doing the first steps in the growth journey, or they're out of the lab, they're there in the field, they're trying to find the first customers, they're trying to build their first of a kinds, and what would you advise to them?
So I think there would be like two topics I would like to touch. The first one, talk to people as early as possible. So this is something that I already like mentioned a bit earlier, but definitely this is highly important to not, well, you mentioned like, okay, like they just got out of the lab. Stay out of the lab as much as you can and really like keep talking, keep failing, keep iterating based on the feedback, not your own feedback, not your team's feedback, but really like based on the market's feedback. So this would be one thing which is very important. So this is really like the customer-centric approach that we were mentioning a bit earlier. So this would be like the first topic, like really talk as early and as much as possible. The second one is the people you hire. Don't necessarily go to the most expert, most senior people if they're not the founders. Because it doesn't matter. On the initial stage, it doesn't. What does matter is really like hiring people who are very motivated, very driven, and give a chance to the youth. Because just like on the side story, so when we started, so I was actually like I'm known actually as the founding intern of SmartHelio. So I was also like the, let's say like the first employee. And at that time, of course, I think I was still at school. I was like maybe like 20 years old or something. I was totally inexperienced in sales, in marketing or whatever. And yet, the CEO Govinda, like we first worked in the previous company, so like, hey, like, do you want to give a hand to this new company I'm thinking of, SmartHelio? I'm like, okay, why not? And although I was not like the most experienced, like of course he could have found like much more experienced, like 34 years old salespeople. But at the end, this doesn't matter. At the end, what really matters is making sure that whoever you are onboarding, do they know what they are going to do here and why they want to do it? And yeah, I think this is very important also to make sure that we are all looking at the same picture, looking at the same peak. And that, yeah, like we just want to have like also some fun during the rides, but at the same time that we are all having the same mission. So yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Yeah, hire motivated people, not necessarily the experts. Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll be sure to highlight that. Thank you very much, Maxine. It was really insightful for me, full of very unusual insights, I would say, and for the sales, for the growing, for automating as well. So thank you very much, and I wish you the best of luck to you and to SmartHelio, and hope that in a couple of years we will see the brain behind the energy, the clean energy, and there will be some part of your DNA, of SmartHelio's DNA there.
Thank you, Emin. It was a pleasure.